Hello and welcome back to Doctor Who, the cancelled years. In this video, we'll be covering season 39 of Doctor Who. So, let's get started. Season 39 would have been the third season for Aidan Gillen as the Doctor, the first and only season for Miranda Raisin as Archime, and the third season for Russell T Davies as showrunner. This also would have been the second season in the ongoing Eternity War. This season would have introduced a new companion named Archime, as portrayed by Miranda Raisin. She would have been the first non-human companion since the Davison era, and this would have been her only season on the show. At the end of season 38, David Arnold stepped down as the show's composer, so a new one was needed. Taking over would be composer Murray Gold, and while the series music would be different, the series would still retain the David Arnold theme music for the title sequence. And also, the colour scheme of the title sequence was changed from green to red. And now, let's get to the episodes. The first episode would have been Massacre of the Daleks, written by Russell T Davies. The story would have been set many years after the end of season 38. The war has gone on longer than anyone could have expected, and the Doctor is no longer the man he used to be. He is a warrior, fighting for a way to end the bloodshed, but he's starting to believe that this bloodshed will never end. We see the TARDIS in flight and the Doctor trying to take down a Dalek ship. The Doctor is able to destroy the ship using some kind of space grenade, however the Dalek ship fires a missile at the TARDIS which forces it to crash land on a nearby planet named Luxurios. We then see a woman on a planet named Archime Leverandru going about her daily business when she spots the TARDIS crash into Luxurios and the Doctor falling out of the TARDIS. She runs over to the crash site to help the Doctor. He tries to speak but ends up blacking out. He then wakes up a few days later in the bedroom where he's greeted by Archime. She explains what happened to him and tries to convince him to rest some more, but the Doctor refuses to rest and attempts to go back to the TARDIS as he knows he has no alternative but to rejoin the battle. Archime follows him into the TARDIS and we get a usual bigger on the inside scene while the Doctor gathers some information about what's been happening in the war, and he discovers that he's been missing for so long he's actually believed to be dead by the Time Lords. With the Doctor being believed to be dead, he realises that he has no actual reason to return to the war now, and so he decides to stay on Luxurios and retire. We then have a montage of the Doctor trying to help the people of Luxurios and actually getting to be the Doctor for once. We then see 6 months later and the Doctor's helping out some technicians in the science lab. However, when he turns on the long-range planet scanner, he discovers that a Dalek army is fastly approaching the planet. We then see the Doctor working with Archime to help prepare the planet for war against the Daleks. The Doctor tries to keep a positive attitude, but deep down, he fears that this may be the beginning of the end. The Daleks arrive and battle commences. The Luxurians do everything they can to push back the Daleks, but to no avail. Archime watches as their people are slaughtered. She tries to run off to help fight with her people, but the Doctor stops her, as he doesn't want a genocide on his hands. So he takes Archime on board the TARDIS against her will and takes off, with Archime demanding to go back home. The Doctor says he's sorry, but he can't, as he turns on the scanner and Luxurios explodes. Archime bursts into tears and the Doctor tries to comfort her. However, the TARDIS is then hit by a chunk of what used to be Luxurios, and the story ends with the TARDIS crash landing on the nearby planet. The second episode would have been Age of Steel, written by Mark Platt. The story that saw the Doctor and Archime exploring the new planet they've crash landed on in search for parts to repair the TARDIS. They find that the planet is occupied by a humanoid race with advanced technology. While exploring the planet, the Doctor and Archime soon discover that the people of the planet are dying from strange illnesses and radiation storms. However, they soon discover that some of the people have had robotic implants to make them stronger, and the Doctor soon realises that this is the beginning of a Cyberman invasion, as the people of this world are slowly being turned into Cybermen. This time there would be a new Cyberman design, which is more robot-like and scarier than the 90s design. It turns out that the Cybermen have invaded the planet to rebuild their army. They plan to destroy both the Daleks and Time Lords and eventually become the new masters of the universe. Eventually a platoon of Daleks arrive on the planet, and a battle between Daleks and Cybermen break out. As the battle goes on, the Doctor and Archer work with a few surviving humans to find a way to destroy both Cybermen and Daleks. The Doctor eventually figures out that using the TARDIS, they can create an EMP wave that will kill both Cybermen and Daleks. The Doctor creates the wave, it's transmitted, and all the Cybermen collapse to the ground, with all the Daleks shutting offline. The Doctor and Archer are about to leave the planet, however the story ends with a cliffhanger, as a giant Dalek saucer crashes through the atmosphere and crash lands on the planet, causing a massive nuclear explosion. The third episode would have been Survivors of War, written by Stephen Moffat. The story that saw the Doctor and Archer waking up hours after the ship crashed with no memories of who they are. They find the world around them to be a nuclear wasteland with only a few remaining buildings of the old world. They soon find a few survivors who also have no memories, and they discover a Dalek in the rubble of a building who also has no memories of what it is. They all agree to unite together and work together to rebuild their society. Throughout the story we would have saw random people regaining some of their memories, and eventually everyone apart from the Dalek remembers who they are. They soon realise that the Dalek will also begin to remember what it is, and that they must destroy it before it can kill them. Eventually, the Dalek regains all its memories, and then proceeds to hunt down the survivors. Eventually, the Dalek is defeated, however we see that only the Doctor and Archer have survived the Dalek. With nothing left living on the world, the two leave in the TARDIS. On board the TARDIS, the Doctor apologises to Archer for what she's been through, and agrees to try and take her to a colony world where she can live. The fourth episode would have been The Freedom Queen, written by Paul Cornell. The story would have saw the Doctor taking Archer to Yardley 68, a refugee camp for those who have lost their homes during the war. Archer is about to say her farewells to the Doctor when suddenly the alarms go off across the planet, and the Doctor is arrested as Time Lords are forbidden on Yardley 68. He's to be taken to the Freedom Queen, who will decide his fate. Meanwhile, Archer goes off and soon runs into her brother's family, who'd moved away from luxurious before the war started, but their new plant was destroyed in the war. Archer would spend most of her time with them for this story, and we would have had a lot of character stuff between them. Meanwhile, the Doctor's taken to the Freedom Queen, and to his surprise, he finds that the Freedom Queen is none other than his old companion, Ace. The Doctor tries to talk to Ace and explain that he's the Doctor, however Ace doesn't believe him, as she believes him to be a Dalek spy, as she only knows the 7th Doctor, and although she met the 8th Doctor in the 8 Doctors, she wouldn't remember the events due to the timelines being out of sync. Ace orders him to be taken away and locked up in maximum security. Eventually the Doctor is able to break out of prison and sneaks into Ace's office to try and convince her that he is the Doctor, where he finds Ace reading reports on strange power readings across the planet. The Doctor tries convincing her again that he is the Doctor, but she refuses to accept it as true. He tries telling her about some of their adventures together, but she believes he could have got that information from anywhere. With no other way to convince her, the Doctor presses his head against hers and telepathically shows her their adventures together. We'd see brief clips from Dragonfire, Remembrance of the Daleks, Silver Nemesis, The Greatest Show in the Galaxy, Ghostlight, The Case of Fenric, and Thin Ice, before we see the faces of Doctors 1 to 9 and then 10. After this, Ace has come to realise that this man is the Doctor. The two catch up with each other, and the Doctor asks what she's doing on Yardley 68. We learn that after the events of Thin Ice, she spent some time in the academy before she was kicked out for being a troublemaker. Then she got bored, stole a TARDIS and flew away. Then at some point in her travels, her TARDIS was shot down and she crash landed on Yardley 68. She took on the title as the Freedom Queen and turned the planet into a rescue camp. The Doctor then turns the focus of conversation to the power reports. Ace passes it off as something natural, but the Doctor has a sense of evil going on in the shadows, so they investigate. It turns out that the camp has been infiltrated by a group of Daleks who have taken over a group of people and are lowering the planet's defences so that the main Dalek army can arrive and destroy the base. The Doctor tries to stop them, but it's too late. The shields go down and battle commences across the planet. However, with help from Archime and Ace, the Doctor is able to defeat the Daleks. However, a quarter of the population have been wiped out, including Archime's relatives. The story would have ended with the Doctor inviting Ace back to the TARDIS for a general farewell scene. The Doctor asks Ace if he'd like her to take her home back to Perivale. However, she declines, saying she's got a new purpose in life, to protect the people of Yardley 68. Just before the Doctor leaves, Archime re-enters the TARDIS. She asks the Doctor if she could stay a bit longer. At first the Doctor refuses, as he doesn't want another companion. However, Archime explains that he needs someone by his side to keep him stable and sane. And after much back and forth arguing, he reluctantly agrees, and the two head off in the TARDIS. The fifth episode would have been Devolution of the Daleks, written by Nicholas Briggs. The story begins with the Doctor being summoned back to Gallifrey by the Lady President Harstrin, after the Time Lords realise that the Doctor is still alive. At first the Doctor refuses the summonings, but is eventually drawn back to the planet when Harstrin reveals that Romana has vanished. On Gallifrey, Harstrin explains the situation to the Doctor. A couple of Gallifreyan days ago, Romana was in charge of setting up a temporary base of operations on a nearby colony world. She took a handful of Time Lord soldiers on board the battle TARDIS with her and set off. However, soon after she left, communications broke down and they've been dead ever since, with reports that the TARDIS never actually reached the colony world. Harstrin asks the Doctor to find Romana and find out what happened to her. The Doctor and Archime leave in the TARDIS to Romana's last known location, space. When they reach the area, the TARDIS comes under attack from an unknown entity, as if something's dragging it through space. The console begins exploding and everything is chaotic. Then when everything stops, the Doctor discovers that they've travelled through a hidden pocket in space, which is a second out of sync with the rest of the universe. The only thing in the pocket universe is a green planet with no name. The Doctor scans the planet and finds multiple TARDISes and Time Lords on the planet, as well as multiple Dalek life signs. He lands the TARDIS on the planet and goes off to investigate. He finds it to be a prison camp run by the Daleks, with Time Lords all chained up. The Doctor learns from a few prisoners that the Daleks are experimenting on them. The Doctor and Archime then disguise themselves as prisoners and sneak into the prison to look for Romana. Eventually the Doctor is able to find Romana and he begins to break her out. However, before they can escape, a group of Time Lords including the Doctor and Romana are called for, but Archime is told to remain. The Doctor and Romana are taken to an underground laboratory to be experimented on, before they're taken away for processing. The Daleks take them to the main laboratory to witness what the Daleks call the next step in Dalek evolution. They watch as a single Dalek begins to shake violently. Then the shaking stops and the Dalek appears to power down. Its casing opens and out steps what appears to be a humanoid Dalek mutant in a Time Lord prisoner outfit. And that's where the Doctor realises what the Daleks are doing. They're using the bodies of Time Lords to revert back into Kaleds. The Doctor and Romana's group is about to be taken away for processing when the Doctor reveals himself to the Daleks. They go to exterminate the Doctor, but he stops them before they can fire. He then gives a big speech to the Daleks, which basically shames the new Kaleds, as they're created from the things they hate. He then tries to run off and stop one of the Dalek machines, but is knocked unconscious by a new Kaled. The Doctor's dragged into a Kaled processing machine, and the story ends on a cliffhanger with Romana watching in horror as the machine begins to turn on. The sixth episode would have been The Kaleds, written by Nicholas Briggs. The story would have opened with a previously segment before going into the main titles, and then the episode begins, with the Dalek laboratory being overrun by armed Time Lords who are being led by Archime. They kill most of the Kaleds and one of the Daleks. They free the Doctor just in time and everyone escapes to the surface. On the planet's surface, a full-on battle has broken out between the Daleks and Time Lords. The Doctor, Archime and Romana enter the Doctor's TARDIS, and they all agree that they must warn Gallifrey at once. They leave the Pocket Universe and travel to Gallifrey to warn the High Council. The next bit of the story would have intercut between two plots. Plot 1 would be on Gallifrey as the Doctor, Romana, Archime and Harstrin discuss their knowledge and find a way to defeat the Kaleds before they get out of hand. And plot 2 would be in the Pocket Universe as the Daleks defeat the Resistance and begin to create more Kaleds. However, as the Kaleds begin to adapt more, they begin to despise the Daleks. Because of the mix of the Time Lord DNA, Kaleds are more tactical than the Daleks, and more of their emotions are stronger than before. They believe the Daleks to be mutants and a disgrace to their race, so they begin to formulate a plan to wipe out the Dalek army. Eventually the Doctor discovers a way to defeat the Daleks and Kaleds. The Pocket Universe is a second out of sync with the rest of the universe. If they can synchronize the pockets with the rest of the universe, it will result in the pockets being destroyed, or at the very least, cut off from the rest of the universe, with the Kaleds hopefully trapped on the other side. The only catch is that the Pocket Universe can only be synchronized from within the pocket itself, so someone will have to sacrifice themselves. The rest of the story plays out with the Doctor, Archime, Romana and Harstrin travelling back to the Pocket Universe and finding that a full-blown war has started between the Daleks, Time Lords and Kaleds, with each side fighting each other. The Doctor and Archime make their way through the battle, while Romana and Harstrin stay back and fight with the Time Lords. The two make their way through the battle and down to the now abandoned laboratory, as the Doctor plants and sets up a device that will resync the Pocket Universe with the rest of the universe. As the device finishes setting up, the Doctor radios Romana that the device is ready and to bring down the TARDIS. The TARDIS lands in front of them and the Doctor begins to say his farewells to Archime. He plans to sacrifice his life so that the Kaleds can never escape. Archime refuses, but the Doctor pushes her aboard the TARDIS. As the TARDIS begins to dematerialise, Archime rushes out of the TARDIS and punches the Doctor, knocking him out cold. She then orders Romana and Harstrin to save him and leave her. On board the TARDIS, the Doctor wakes up to find himself handcuffed to a railing. He finds that Romana has piloted the TARDIS out of the Pocket Universe. Archime speaks to the Doctor via an earpiece. She tells him that she's sorry. She tells him that she's got nothing to go home to. No home, no planet, no family. It's just her. But the Doctor still has his home, his people, his planet. She orders him to never lose them. And then we see Archime activate the device. And in the main universe, a chunk of space begins to fold in on itself, signifying that the Pocket Universe is gone. Romana uncuffs the Doctor as Harstrin pilots the TARDIS back to Gallifrey. She apologises to the Doctor and says that Archime's sacrifice will not be forgotten. The Doctor rages at Romana and Harstrin about how they let her die and that it should have been him. He then proceeds to go on about how the war has changed them and that none of this would ever have happened if he wasn't so stupid. He then has a flashback to the iconic "Do I Have That Right" scene from Genesis of the Daleks. The TARDIS arrives on Gallifrey and the Doctor kicks Romana and Harstrin off the TARDIS. Romana asks the Doctor what he's doing and he says that he's ending this war before it even starts. The TARDIS dematerialise and the episode ends with the Doctor setting some controls on the TARDIS, and the scanner reads out Skaro, the 1000-Year War Era. And with that, the episode ends. The 7th episode would have been The War That Never Was, written by Russell T Davies. The story opens with the Doctor in the TARDIS. The TARDIS picks up an urgent message from Romana on Gallifrey, asking for the Doctor's help. He reluctantly agrees and lands on Gallifrey in the President's office, where he's greeted by Romana, Harstrom and Leela. Romana and Harstrom explain to the Doctor that Gallifrey is at threat of war, as they've received a threat from a race of aliens known as the Galatrans. The Galatran leader sends them a message saying that for too long the Time Lords have been in control of the universe. Now it's time for new Lords of Time in the form of the Galatrans. They declare war on the planet and for them to be ready for anything. The message ends and the Doctor learns that the Galatrans are already on their way. The Doctor then helps Romana, Harstrom and Leela prepare the planet for war. Eventually, the Galatrans arrive. Their ships break through the transduction barrier and begin attacking the major citadels. Meanwhile, Time Lord soldiers are dropping dead to the ground every second, and the Galatrans have begun their slaughter on everyone that stands in their way. The Time Lords cannot stand up to the Galatrans. This may be the end. In a panic effort, the Doctor and Romana begin researching into the Galatrans to find out what they are and where they came from. They discover that they're essentially a replacement race. If somehow a really powerful or really important race was erased from existence, then a new and stronger race would take their place. They all work out that they must bring back this now dead race to defeat the Galatrans. But how do you know what was meant to be if it's never existed? The only people who would remember the old race are those who have been cut off from the rest of the universe. Those on Gallifrey who were imprisoned in Dwarf Star alloy chambers. The prison record shows that only one person on Gallifrey is currently imprisoned in the Dwarf Star alloy chamber on Gallifrey. This person could save Gallifrey. The only catch? This person once was a threat to Gallifrey. The Doctor and Romana go deep within Gallifrey to the prison chambers and free the only person who can help them, Colleen. Romana explains to Colleen that time has been rewritten and Gallifrey is under attack from a stronger force than them. They need to connect her memories into the Matrix and compare her memories to this universe's timeline. After her memories are scanned, they find what has changed. The Galatrans are replacing a race known as Daleks. Colleen explains the Daleks to everyone, but no one has ever heard of a Dalek before, though the Doctor has an idea. Throughout the story, the Doctor's been having sort of flashbacks to an event he's never experienced before. It involves him in a metal bunker, rigging it to blow up. Everyone theorises that the Doctor erased the Daleks from ever being created by destroying their home planet before the Daleks could even be created, and this has resulted in the Galatrans being created, who are more powerful than the Daleks. After learning more about the Daleks, everyone agrees that while the Daleks are evil, at least they're not the Galatrans. They must find a way to bring back the Daleks and defeat the Galatrans, but they can't go back in time and stop the Doctor from destroying Skaro, or else it could destroy the universe. The only way is to somehow retrieve the Daleks, using Colleen's memories from the old timeline and any memories buried deep within the Doctor's mind. Eventually, they're able to dig out one memory from the Doctor's mind, which is the events of Devolution of the Daleks and the Kaleds. They discover that if they can re-establish connection with the Pocket Universe, there may be a chance of returning the Daleks to the universe. Using the Matrix, the Doctor's memories of the Pocket Universe, and Colleen's mind, they're able to re-establish connection with the Pocket Universe. However, it costs Colleen her life, as her brain ends up being destroyed by the Matrix. She ends up collapsing to the ground and begins to regenerate into a new incarnation who'd be portrayed by Nicola Walker. By the time the new Colleen comes around, the Doctor and Romana are gone to travel to the Pocket Universe. There they find a slaughter has gone on, with many Time Lord and Kaled bodies. As they explore, they begin to regain their memories of the correct history. They eventually find 3 Dalek survivors. The Doctor and Romana talk with the Daleks. Both sides agree that the Galatrans are a threat to the universe that must be destroyed. They all agree to make a temporary alliance to defeat the Galatrans. They go off to leave in the TARDIS, but they're stopped by a voice calling out to the Doctor. The story would end on a cliffhanger, with the voice being revealed to be Archime. She runs over to the Doctor out of happiness to see him, but the Doctor is simply confused and asks who she is. The final episode would have been The Enemy of My Enemy, written by Russell T Davies. The story would have saw the Time Lords and the Daleks being forced to team up with each other to defeat the Galatrins. When the Galatrins are defeated, the Time Lords are saved from defeat and the Daleks will return to the universe. However, both oppositions are secretly planning to wipe out the others once the Galatrins are no more. An ongoing thread in this story would have involved the Doctor and Archime. Because the Daleks were never created, the war never happened, and so because of this, the Doctor never would have met Archime. Therefore, the Doctor has no memories of her, so a good portion of the story would have essentially saw the two of them rebuilding their friendship. Eventually, the Time Lords and Daleks are victorious, and the Galatrins are wiped out. And now the Daleks are back, the alliance is over. The last remaining Dalek on Gallifrey instantly ends the ceasefire and then begins to try and kill everyone else. Everyone takes cover and tries to kill the Dalek. Eventually the Dalek is able to kill one person, Archime. And within seconds of her death, the Doctor destroys the Dalek. He goes over to Archime's corpse. He's upset, but he doesn't really know why. He knows he knew her, but he doesn't remember a single thing about her, and he presumes that she must have meant something important to him. The story would have ended with the Doctor alone in the grass field, paying his respects to two gravestones. The first grave reads Gene Robinson, and the other grave reads Archime. And with that note, the episode ends. And that concludes season 39 of Doctor Who. This would have been considered an okay season, though many people weren't still keen on the whole Eternity War thing. So join me next time for series 2 of The Pyramid. Until then, thank you for watching and goodbye.